At my work gala, my partner pretended he didn't know my boss. But when I left to grab drinks, I saw them dancing, closer than coworkers. I hid behind a column and heard him whisper, "She has no idea." I returned with the drinks, handed them both their glasses, and said, "To knowing everything. Every single thing." The silence at that table echoed louder than the band. I'm 38, living in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been in event marketing for 13 years now. I'm good at what I do. I've worked my way up, slowly and quietly, and finally landed a senior role at a boutique marketing firm downtown. My boss, Evelyn, is sharp. She can cut a man down with just her words, and most people at the company either fear her or want to be her. I respected her. Thought she respected me too. Now, about Ryan. He's 40. I met him through a mutual friend at a birthday dinner in Savannah. At first, I thought he was just another guy with stories that sounded too polished. He claimed to be a consultant. Never got too deep into the specifics. Said he worked with private clients and discrete partnerships. I figured that meant tech stuff or something legal. He was smart, confident, had a way of making you feel like you were the only one in the room. We dated for about a year and a half before all this happened. He met my friends. Came to family dinners. Didn't love big events, but he said he'd come to my company gala this year because it meant a lot to me. I was getting an award, Leadership in Innovation. It wasn't just a line on my resume. It meant I was finally being seen. The night of the gala, I was nervous. I wore this emerald green dress that hugged in all the right places. Ryan wore a navy tux and looked like something out of a magazine. He kissed my shoulder before we walked into the venue and told me I looked like the woman who's about to run the damn company. I smiled, because I believed him. The place was stunning. Big ballroom on the riverfront, tall windows, candles on every table. It was one of those nights that feels bigger than real life. I introduced Ryan to everyone. Coworkers. Clients. Evelyn. She walked over in this sleek black dress, hair pulled back tight like she always wore it. I said, "Evelyn, this is my partner, Ryan." He stuck out his hand. "Pleasure to meet you." She didn't miss a beat. Shook his hand, smiled that thin smile she always uses in meetings, and said, "Likewise." Nothing seemed off in the moment. But looking back, there was something behind her eyes. Something I didn't catch because I didn't want to see it. About an hour in, Ryan seemed restless. Kept glancing around. I asked if he was okay. He said he was fine, just needed a drink. I offered to go get them. "Champagne okay?" I asked. "Perfect," he said. I told Evelyn I'd be right back and headed to the bar. It was only a short walk, but the line was long. I must have been gone 7 or 8 minutes. When I returned, I couldn't find either of them at our table. I looked around, and that's when I saw them. On the dance floor. It wasn't the kind of dancing coworkers do. His hand was low on her back, almost too low. She leaned into him. They were swaying like they'd done it before. Like they knew each other's rhythms. Then I saw his mouth near her ear. I froze, half hiding behind one of the thick white columns by the edge of the room. I couldn't move. I just stood there like an idiot, holding 2 flutes of champagne. Then he said it. "She has no idea." Evelyn laughed. Not a loud laugh. Just enough for me to hear. "And she won't." I felt the floor tilt under me. My vision went blurry for a second. I clenched the glasses tighter and took a deep breath. I walked straight over to them. They saw me coming, but they didn't step apart fast enough. I was already there. I handed them their drinks. "To knowing everything," I said, my voice steady. "Every single thing." They froze. No words. Just silence. Evelyn looked down. Ryan opened his mouth and closed it again. We sat back down at our table. The music kept playing. People kept laughing around us. But it felt like I was sitting in the middle of a graveyard. I didn't say another word for the rest of the night. We didn't talk on the way home. Ryan kept glancing at me while he drove, like he wanted to say something, but every time he opened his mouth, he shut it again. Good. I didn't want his lies. I just stared out the window. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was somewhere worse, completely numb. When we got home, I walked straight into the bedroom and started pulling off my earrings. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked. I laughed. "You mean now? Now you want to talk?" He stepped in like he thought we were about to have some long, healing discussion. I turned around and looked him in the eye. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. That 1-second pause told me everything. "Ryan." "How long?" He finally said it. "A few months." I nodded. "Before or after you met me?" His face twisted. "I knew of her before you. We didn't start anything until later." "Define later," I said. He didn't answer. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "So you knew she was my boss?" "From the beginning." "She didn't tell me you worked for her until after we'd already what?" I snapped. "Already started fucking?" He shut his mouth. That silence was my confirmation. I kicked off my heels and stood up. "Get out." "Wait, can we talk like adults for a second?" I walked over to my dresser and pulled out a drawer, tossing his socks and boxers into a bag. Adults don't lie for fun. Adults don't screw their partner's boss and then stand around at galas like everything's fine. "I didn't plan for it to happen like this," he said quietly. "No, you just let it happen. Every damn time." He didn't leave that night. He slept on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, he was gone before I got up. No note. No text. I went to work like nothing happened. Evelyn avoided me. Of course she did. She knew I knew. She didn't even have the guts to face me. For 2 weeks, we didn't speak. Then, one morning, I was called into HR. Evelyn sat at the end of the conference table. Her face was calm, cold. "We're restructuring," she said. "Unfortunately, your position is being dissolved." I blinked. "You're firing me." "It's a company-wide decision," she said, not even blinking. "It's not personal." Bullshit. I packed up my things in silence. Coworkers stared but didn't say anything. I walked out of there feeling like I'd been pushed off a cliff. I didn't cry until I got home. I sat on the floor in my hallway and sobbed until my stomach hurt. Ryan tried to reach out. He sent flowers. Left voicemails. Said he wanted to explain everything. I blocked his number. But I wasn't done. They both thought I'd disappear. That I'd crumble. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to post some long emotional rant online. I was going to ruin them. Quietly. Fully. First, I started digging. I had no job, no partner, and no reputation left at that company, but I had time. And I had access. I still have my old emails, my contacts, the vendor logs. Everything I'd ever touched while working under Evelyn. I didn't touch anything illegal, but I went through every file I'd backed up, every conversation I'd documented. And I found something. A consulting invoice, dated 6 months ago. The name listed, Mason Strategies LLC. That was Ryan's company. She'd hired him. It wasn't a personal fling that turned into a mess. It had started as a business deal. She had brought him in, likely under the radar, and that's how they reconnected. I wouldn't be surprised if they knew each other long before I ever showed up in the picture. That invoice gave me something to work with. I called a friend of mine, Angie, who used to work in corporate compliance before she left to freelance. I trusted her. I said, "Can you tell me if this looks like conflict of interest stuff? Like something a board would want to know about?" She took one look and said, "Oh yeah. If she didn't disclose this consulting contract to HR or to accounting, and especially if there's any personal relationship involved, it's a fireable offense in most private companies." So I got to work. I didn't go to HR at her company. That would have gone nowhere. Evelyn had them in her pocket. Instead, I sent a sealed packet, anonymously, to the board of directors. Evelyn was high up, but she wasn't untouchable. The board had final say. Inside the packet, I included a printed copy of the invoice for Mason Strategies LLC, screenshots of emails where Evelyn had referred to external consulting input but never mentioned names, a timeline I laid out, showing when Ryan and I had started dating, when I had invited him to events, and when I saw them together at the gala. I ended it with one line: "If this isn't a violation of company ethics, what is?" I didn't stop there. I also sent another copy to a regional business journal that had just published a feature on powerful women in Charleston marketing. Evelyn was one of them. I gave them everything. They didn't use my name, but they ran the story 2 weeks later under the headline, "Conflict of Interest Allegations Surface Around Local Marketing Executive." Within days, I started getting texts from old coworkers. "She's freaking out. HR has launched an internal investigation." Ryan's name came up. She denied knowing him personally. LMAO. But the real twist came from somewhere I didn't expect. Ryan's ex. She reached out to me through Instagram. Her name was Janelle. She said she saw the article and recognized his company name. Said she'd been through something similar. That he lies, manipulates, gets close to women with connections and uses them to land consulting contracts. She told me he once dated a lawyer in Charlotte, then ghosted her after scoring a big real estate client she'd introduced him to. He'd done this before. That was when I realized I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with a pattern. A scam. So I dug deeper into his business. Turns out Mason Strategies LLC was registered under a P.O. box in Bluffton. No office. No employees listed except him. And no public record of any client besides my former employer. I handed everything over to the Business Journal reporter. He said this could turn into something bigger. I said, "Good." 3 weeks after the article dropped, I got a call from Angie. "Check your email," she said, barely holding in a laugh. There it was, a forwarded message she'd gotten from a contact at Evelyn's company. An internal memo. Evelyn had resigned effective immediately, citing personal reasons. She was out. The board didn't fire her officially. Probably gave her the option to leave quietly to avoid more press. But I knew the truth. Everyone inside that building knew. The woman who tried to erase me got flushed out of her own power seat. And Ryan? He was next. The journalist emailed me again, this time asking if I'd be willing to go on record for a follow-up piece. I said no, I wasn't doing this for credit. But I did give him more. The list of names Janelle gave me, the fake client references Ryan used, even the half-finished proposals I found on my shared Google Drive where he copy-pasted phrases from my past work. The second article hit harder than the first. This time, Ryan's name was in the title, "Ghost Consultant Tied to Ethics Scandal, No Clients, No Office, Just Connections." I heard from Janelle again. "He shut down the P.O. box," she said. "His business site is offline." A week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Ryan. I almost didn't open it, but I did. Inside was a single page, handwritten. It said, "You made your point. You destroyed 2 people's lives because you got your feelings hurt. Congratulations." I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I laughed. A deep, bitter laugh that I didn't even know was inside me. Because that was his takeaway? That I destroyed their lives? They did that on their own. I just gave the truth a push. But here's the part one didn't expect. I didn't walk away spotless either. The industry in Charleston is small. Word travels. Even though I didn't use my name in any reports, people talk. Some viewed me as the woman who tanked a career out of jealousy. One former coworker, someone I thought was a friend, told another, she went scorched earth because she couldn't handle losing. I lost job offers. I lost connections. I wasn't surprised. Revenge always costs something. And I paid for mine. But I'd do it again. Because I didn't just lose a job or a man. I was lied to. Disrespected. Used like a stepping stone by two people who thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, wouldn't matter. So I made sure they couldn't keep doing it to someone else. A few months later, I took a contract role with a national firm based in Atlanta. Started over. Moved into a new apartment. Different city, different people. Nobody knew me as the woman who torched a boss and a boyfriend. They just saw my work. My skills. Sometimes, I still get bitter. Still think about that night at the gala. The music. The whisper. The way Evelyn smiled at me like I was a fool. But then I remember handing them their drinks. And saying the words I never got to take back. To knowing everything. Every single thing. And it still gives me peace. Even if the cost was high, it was the only way I could ever sleep again.